Welcome back, everybody. The parents of a teenage boy from Buffalo, New York, are calling his suicide a tragic reminder of America's ongoing problem with anti-gay bullying. 14-year-old Jamie Rodemeyer took his life on Sunday after what he says was years of bullying in school and online over his sexuality. Jamie kept a regular blog, and months before his death, he posted an It Gets Better video on YouTube where he talked about his pain and encouraged other kids like him to stay optimistic.
They taught me in the hallways, and I felt like I could never escape it. And I made a form spring, which I should have done. And people would just constantly send me hate, telling me that gay people go to hell. Hold your head up and you'll go far. Because that's all you have to do. Just love yourself and you're set.
Unfortunately, the same kind of hate that Jamie faced on a daily basis continues to make its way into political discourse. Oklahoma state lawmaker Sally Kern is known for her incendiary comments, but she's facing new outrage over comments she recently made on the radio talk show Americans for Truth about homosexuality. Here she is suggesting that being gay is worse than terrorism.
Every day, our young people, adults too, but especially our young people, are bombarded at school, in movies, in music, on TV, in the mall, in magazines. They're bombarded with homosexuality is normal and natural. It's something they have to deal with every day. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with a terrorist attack every day.
Fred Sainz is the Vice President of Communications for the Human Rights Campaign, which is speaking out against those remarks. Fred, on the heels of the full repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell yesterday, explain to all of us, what planet does this woman live on? And while we're all allowed free speech, does this qualify as hate speech by a public official?
Well, words have real consequences, and unfortunately history reflects that they're oftentimes used as the basis for discrimination and bullying. The unfortunate reality is that oftentimes the statements that are made by our leaders, whether they be religious leaders or elected officials, are given increased credibility and great weight. And they are certainly not a helpful way to further discussion on the real barriers that gay and transgender Americans face in everyday life. And so the unfortunate part is that these kinds of statements lead to the fact that gays and lesbians can still be fired in 35 states across our country simply for their sexual orientation, or in 41 states for their gender identity. There is also an epidemic of bullying across this country, and we believe that there is a responsibility on our part to call out the statements by Representative Kern and others like her as not only inaccurate, but as being incredibly injurious to a civil dialogue in this country about the barriers to equality. And yes, Thomas, I do believe that they are the equivalent of hate speech because they do serve as the basis for discrimination, and oftentimes they lead to very real consequences in our society. And that's why HRC has launched a project called Call It Out, in order to call out the statements of this kind by officials that really are in positions of great trust, because we deserve better as Americans. Certainly the constituents in Representative Kern's district in Oklahoma deserve better from her.
Fred, I wanted to say, you know, we're trying to educate our kids to treat everybody with respect and treat everybody with tolerance. Unfortunately, we have situations like Jamie's situation, Rodemeyer, who committed suicide. We're going to be 1 year at the anniversary of Tyler Clementi, the Rutgers student. Tomorrow will be the 1-year anniversary of his suicide. You would think that we've moved forward to a point in time where we can have adult conversations about these situations, but how are adults supposed to tell kids how they should behave when the adults around this country, political leaders, are saying statements like that?
No, I think that that's an incredibly important point. You can imagine how a kid who is struggling with their sexual orientation or gender identity throughout this country, especially in places of this country where it is still exceptionally hard to be true and honest to yourself about your sexual orientation or gender identity, the way in which they internalize these statements as being rejecting statements by society. So it creates incredible problems not only for their own self-esteem, but for their their identity going forward as individuals. And we see it play out at all stages of their human development. And we would offer that not only is it not good for those individuals, for those kids who are really trying to develop themselves into, successful and contributing members of American society, but that it's also not good for our society overall. So to the extent that especially elected officials they have a responsibility to treat these issues responsibly, not only to provide legal protections for all members of their society, but to speak in constructive, accurate ways about truly the barriers that these kids face, and to do everything within their power to make it easier to grow up in this country and not to provide inaccurate and unhelpful barriers that simply establish further walls in between segments of our society.
And I understand, Fred, there's currently a petition online for people who oppose those comments, correct?
There most certainly is. We believe that the governor of Oklahoma, as well as the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, have a responsibility to speak out on behalf of the state and the state's elected official, and specifically to say that Representative Kern's statements are not in keeping with the good people of Oklahoma. The factual record of what she is saying, they have a responsibility to correct, and we as fair-minded Americans and as activists on behalf of gay and transgender Americans also have a responsibility to call out this behavior and make sure that Americans who may be listening, people across the country who may be listening, know that these statements are not only not accurate, but they are certainly not helpful to a real discourse about the barriers that gay and transgender Americans face.
Fred Sainz from the HRC. Fred, thanks so much. We appreciate you coming on and joining us to talk about this morning.
Thank you.